All right, we're live.
We're on.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning,
Morning.
Ava. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Irving. Although it looks like
My son's, yeah.
you're on your son's Zoom. I love it.
He uses
Um,
it when he watches the replay of the football games to see like the game film.
that's great. Well, hopefully, he wasn't watching the replay of the Browns game from yesterday. It was quite the debacle per
Yeah.
usual.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Irv, thanks for taking your time today. One of the things that we're doing at Midtown Capital Advisors is just giving a pulse of the market to the folks that we interact with daily: buyers, sellers, banks, wealth managers, students from John Carroll University. And Ava, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself in a moment. But in general, this is one of the first times where we're doing a recording. I guess it would be a podcast type feel. Um, but what we've talked to some of our constituents is, hey, we want to hear from the banks. We want to hear from folks who are inside kind of the decision making process locally for M&A. A lot of what we're doing is representing small business owners in the marketplace for sale, and then pairing them with buyers, and then obviously we try to get them to folks like you. So before we jump into that, let's do some introductions. Ava, since Midtown's going first, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll kick it over to Irving.
Yeah, so I am just now the marketing intern for MCA, and right now we're working on the November newsletter that should be polished up within the next week and sent out. And if you like what you see, sign up with the link that is linked in the newsletter for the month. The monthly newsletters, you'll get it every month. And yeah, this is the first time that we're doing something like this, so it's really exciting to see how it's going to work out.
Yeah, we want your feedback. Tell us.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ava. Irving, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so 22 years in banking. Started my career out in a management training program with National City Bank through the financial crisis of '08. Became PNC Bank, kind of pivoted what I was doing from retail banking to small business banking. Did that until 2017, and then I took a role for a smaller bank called Chemical Bank out of Midland, Michigan. Was working on a little bit larger size middle market deals, just trying to go upstream with my business development, with my networking skills. And through a few acquisitions, Chemical Bank became Huntington Bank a little over 3 years ago. I'm still in the same kind of role and capacity, still working with clients, privately held businesses, typically in the 10 to 70 million range in annual revenues. Typically, the aggregate exposure for my clients on the lending side is 1 million, about 15 million. But I've worked with clients that are smaller than that $10 million revenue space. And I have clients that are larger than $70 million. They're just not always borrowing entities. So, one thing I tell people, a lot of people in the market think of bankers as lenders primarily. And although I do lending, I try to explain to folks that I'm also available to be your relationship manager for cash management, treasury needs, and just being your go-to person at the bank. Because a lot of times people get frustrated when they have to call an 800 number or walk into a location and talk to somebody. I'm very accessible through cell phone and email.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the key, right? Just want to be able to get a hold of somebody when I have an issue, running my business or any business owner, right? Is I want to be able to talk to somebody in real time who can get me to the right person, and that seems to be kind of
absolutely.
your approach, which I think is a great approach. And I guess for the record, I guess Irving and I we worked together for a number of years, so I got to go on the journey with him from Chemical to almost Huntington Bank. But my journey in the banking world ended where Huntington took over here locally. So you alluded a little bit to who you work with and the size of companies. Can you talk a little bit about kind of your book of business and who you not names, of course, but composition. So what types of companies do you work with? Because eventually I'm going to ask you some questions about um, economics and what they're feeling. And again, you're talking to business owners every day, right? And some of these business owners may or may not be like the folks that we're dealing with, but in general, right, there's a big thought process around the silver tsunami, which is baby boomers selling their companies. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. But before we do, walk us through the types of companies you work with.
For sure. So one thing I didn't mention in my introduction is I'm a Cleveland guy, born and raised, and typically on the east side of Cleveland. So when you ask about my book of business, primarily comprised of companies in northeastern Ohio. I do have a few clients that are outside, but I typically don't, go too far outside of northeastern Ohio. The composition of the book is Cleveland based, let's call it what it is. A lot of manufacturing, a lot of distribution, and then non for profit. Huntington has an appetite to help the community, and through just some book reshuffling and attrition at the bank, I've inherited some non for profits that I've helped with lending needs, cash management needs. But the majority, I'd say, are manufacturing, some distribution, and then some service type industries where it could be B2B or B2C. So a good example could be like a law firm, no real product that they're making, but they still have needs for equipment, build outs of their space if they do own a building, sometimes working capital needs, things like that. So those would be like the industries, I guess, that I cover most of the time. I've seen kind of all of it, though. I'm not going to lie. I got some retail. I got some strange ones, right? Some condo associations. I'm just I'm looking at my list of clients that I've talked to just this morning. But yeah, manufacturing, being a Cleveland person, I feel like that's really where a lot of the bread and butter here is.
Yeah, I think people forget that the bank really has a few sides to it, right? But deposits and lending and condo associations make sense if you live in a development like I do, and you write that check for however much it is each year, or some people have it monthly, right? That's got to go somewhere. And at the end of the day, there has to be someone behind the scenes working on it, right? It's not all just computers and AI, which is something that's great about your approach to doing business. Now, a little bit more about your kind of your client base. Are you seeing any one area more active than the other in terms of growth or acquisition? I think just to get into it a little bit, people want to know why aren't business owners selling, right? If they're of age, why aren't they selling? I don't know if you have any perspective on that, but just kind of which ones are active, and maybe that will lead into another area.
Sure. So in my book, personally, there is some activity from a silver tsunami side where folks are looking to potentially get out of their businesses. And I feel like now is maybe a good time because performance has been on the increase since the COVID downturn. The issue there becomes rates are higher now. So, and I saw that in like your list of questions. So does that affect people? I don't know if it affects the sellers as much as the buyers, but that's something that we have to take into consideration. The other thing that I'm seeing on why maybe there, I'm seeing some out there, but why maybe some folks are holding on is, this is something a lot of times that a business owner is closely tied to. This is their baby, and they talk about leaving. And then when they get an offer or they start talking to somebody like yourself, Sean, and maybe it comes to be more realistic that, oh, maybe I am going to sell. What are they going to do? And a lot of these guys haven't planned for that. They think it's, I'm going to golf every single day, but are you really going to do that? Or they think they're going to hang out with their wives all day, but do they really want to do that? So I feel like that's maybe the hesitation and why we're not seeing more. But, 2024 has been a good example of a lot of conversations around it and planning for exits. And I think it's on us as the professionals who help these clients, be it from a banking standpoint, from a sales standpoint, like what you do, helping them get ready. I think that's the piece that maybe was overlooked by especially folks like me before. You know, we talk about succession planning, but were we actually helping them with any of that?
You're right. It's the difference between just talking about it and doing it. And I wonder if there's a sense of, man, COVID was so crappy. Business was so crappy. It's finally, ticking up and profitable again. Maybe I'll squeeze another year out of it, and press myself and my body another year. Because let's face it, running a manufacturer or distribution, just running a business in general is stressful, right? And that takes a toll on your body over time. So, just if you have any comments on that, do you think they're saying, hey, let's just squeeze out a couple more bucks this year, and maybe next year is going to be that year to sell?
Absolutely. Even though revenues are bouncing back, our margins always bouncing back. I don't know, or are they staying pretty consistent? And then the second piece to that is, who do they sell it to? If somebody has a current employee, like a key employee who they trust, I believe the transition could be a little bit smooth, more smooth than they find somebody in the market or a strategic that comes in that they don't really have a relationship with. And then they start to worry like, hey, this is my reputation. This is my baby. What am I going to do if I do sell it and it doesn't work out? So I think those are two comments that I could add to your question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And maybe can you talk a little bit more about the ones who aren't selling? What are they doing, right? Maybe if they're preparing, are you seeing requests for equipment? Are you seeing investments in technology? What are they doing, right? If the ones that are doing well, what are you seeing?
So from a manufacturing front, it's a lot of, CapEx, making sure that they have updated equipment, updated resources to be able to continue making what they're making or doing what they're doing and maybe make it more efficient. That comes with a cost, right? I mean, they're leveraging themselves. The other piece to that is, are some of them trying the next generation? Like I'm thinking of one client in particular. So he's been doing this probably 40 years and his daughter's now getting into the business. Is she the one who's going to take it over? I don't know. Dad's there right now working with her. Maybe this is a trial run to see if that's the next generation to take it. But situations like that are happening more and more. You had said something earlier about it takes a toll on their body. I'm thinking of another manufacturing client. The father is ill, and the two sons are they're taking over the business, but the father still wants to be involved to some level because he is the owner, but health issues. So how do you make those transitions? Is there any official plan in place, or is it pretty much like, hey, dad hands over the keys? Those are things that we're struggling with every day to try to help these folks with.
Yeah, that's a good point. The health is often overlooked when you see and read about articles. The family members oftentimes get left with, their whether uncle, father, whoever, their family member didn't get to finish their life work, right? And they're kind of stuck with the business, and what do I do with it? I've had multiple conversations with estates and trustees. I feel like that is probably just starting and probably won't slow down. So if you're seeing it and I'm seeing it and others are probably seeing that too, so what would be your advice to some of those folks in that position who might be listening today or might, find this interview at some point, right? People talk about succession planning. What are some things they can do, right away to, if you're a business owner, right, what do you do, right? Maybe they just don't know where to start.
So I heard an awesome thing at ETA event like a week or two ago. It's the day you start the business is the day you should start planning to exit the business. Never heard that one before, and I liked it. I think that's really important. So when you buy something, be it personally or as a business owner, you should have a plan for it, right? Obviously, maybe an appliance is a bad example because you don't know when it's going to stop working, but a vehicle, you could keep dumping money into it, right? Maybe your goal is, hey, I bought this car, I'm keeping it for 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is. I think with the business, if you start one and it's, maybe you're 40 years old, is your goal to retire at 65? So you have 25 years of work to put in, but do you have that plan in place? Like, hey, I know my kid is, 15 years old and he likes engineering and maybe he could figure out how to run my manufacturing plant. That's just an example. Or are you keeping that business on the forefront when you're doing your marketing or with your clients to find out, hey, can I sell this to a competitor at some point? Can I market it to an MCA to sell for me? Those are all types of things that I think business owners aren't doing because they're so entrenched in the day to day. And I think that's one thing that they need to do. The second piece is trust all of your advisors. Have good attorneys, have good CPAs, and I don't know what good means. I'm not going to lie. You have to have a good relationship with them, right? Just like with a banker. People don't typically bank with the bank. They bank with the banker. Now, if the banker can't get things done, maybe they leave the bank. I get it. But having those good advisors to make sure your financials are clean and somebody could come in and look at them, having that attorney who can help you with putting together, if you get an offer, how do you counter it? Or knowing like, are you going to do this kind of a sale or that kind of a sale? I think those are things that business owners don't always have all of the knowledge of, and the advisors are the people who can really help them with that. So I would tell them to be gear up with those people if you don't have them. And the last, just because of what you do, Sean, maybe it's not too early to engage somebody like yourself early on in the business cycle, because at some point they might come to you and say, now I'm ready to sell. Well, now you have, intimate knowledge of the business and the person, so you can portray them to the next person or to the buyer way better than somebody who just comes to you and says, I'm ready to sell right now. And you're like, okay, but I don't know you that well. So it could be beneficial for both of you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My objective all the time is to try to kill the deal as soon as it possibly can. And timing is a big thing. If they're coming to me in a hurry, I'm ready to sell, it's kind of a red flag or a yellow flag to pause and ask questions and understand. And, oftentimes that I get an opportunity to talk to business owners, I'm asking a lot of these same questions, who's their advisors, who's their accountant, who's their lawyer, especially in a town like Cleveland where everyone knows everybody. It's important to have that quality team. It doesn't have to have a brand name that costs a lot of money, but as long as you have a go-to person that you can hop on the phone, because the earlier you can get your advisors thinking on the same page, the better that, that business exit is going to be. So just to reiterate your comments, yeah, I agree with that. Walk me through a little bit about, kind of think from an economic standpoint, Cleveland in general. How do you think Cleveland is poised for the next, 2025? We'll take it short. What do you think compared to like this year and last year from an M&A perspective, what you've seen, and what do you think about next year?
I think it's going to continue to be a hot topic. 2024 started out strange, right? Because we hadn't seen the rates kind of bubble up like they did. And then, whatever's going on tomorrow is a busy day for this country too, right? So people are very kind of, wonky on what they want to do. But that being said, we're going to a lot of these events and meeting a lot of these prospective buyers, prospective sellers. And I think the outlook for 2025 is good. I think Cleveland is a market that has a lot of these small, privately held businesses that have the ownership that's of age where it's time to make a decision. Do I think all of them will sell? I bet you some of them will just close down. It's sad to say that these people won't have their legacy, won't maybe make the one big payday that they could get. But that's kind of how business sometimes is what I'm learning. But there's enough of a community out there that's guiding folks to start looking at these opportunities to acquire versus starting from scratch. And I think that's only gaining momentum into 2025. And it's across the board in the industry. So I keep talking about manufacturing only because that's an area that I have a lot of clients in. But even in like real estate, for example, and I'm not saying like investment real estate where you're owning a bunch of different residential properties or commercial properties. I'm saying you might be a real estate manager or maintenance person. And that's a really hot topic right now in a hot area because there's so many older properties in our city that folks want to buy, but then they need rehabbed and things like that. So I've been seeing a lot of people talking about making acquisitions on property management firms. The other piece of that is, with Amazon being as big as it is, companies that are sort of complements to that. So through trucking, logistics, distribution cycles, or segments, I'm sorry, like those I feel like are pretty hot. And Cleveland, just like every other town, I'm sure has so many of these Amazon locations that are taking over former malls and areas that I think that's going to continue to grow as folks see opportunity to sort of being a roll up to them.
Yeah, you make some really good points there, and I want to touch on both of them in a second. Let's talk about real estate first. Unfortunately, businesses do go out of business, right? I have tons of stories. You probably have stories as well of businesses that they lost their major client or there was a concentration, right? Another word to the warning to business owners is if you have one major client, diversify. It matters. If you lose that client, all right, your business could be in trouble. So even while times are good, that's probably the time to diversify the most. I am not licensed in real estate. You're not licensed in real estate. So this isn't real estate investment guidance, but we both see it and feel it, right? You do some real estate lending as well, right? So maybe walk us through kind of what you're seeing on the real estate side. If the businesses are going out and they have the real estate, well, what happens to it, right? What are you seeing? Are you working with real estate buyers and sellers, or walk us through a little bit of that side of your world?
So I primarily deal with owner-occupied real estate in the area of Huntington that I work in. So it's you have an operating company and you have a LLC that holds the real estate, and you're basically paying yourself the rent. So what I'm seeing when there's businesses maybe going under or selling, these owners are either holding onto the real estate as a secondary source of income, or they are selling the real estate because that has potentially more value than their operating company at whatever level, depending on where they're at in their life cycle of the business. From a commercial or investment real estate play, so the bank will look at folks who want to diversify their portfolio and own a piece of investment real estate if you're in my area. Now, when I say my area, like I said, mainly privately held businesses, but Huntington does have a sector of the bank that does purely investment real estate. So shopping plazas, large hotels, apartment buildings, things like that.
So we might edit the hotels out of there. You said large ones. It's just in my years as a lender, it was always difficult to get hotels done, but someone's doing it, right?
Well, and that's the thing. So you go to what's his name side of the bank, and they're looking at those deals.
Yeah,
but we're just not. But all I'm saying is, so there's a lot of those properties that are coming up for sale as well. The issue then becomes, at least from a retail perspective, are retail stores as hot a commodity as they used to be? Are office buildings as hot a commodity as they used to be because of the whole work from home or partial work from home? And, that's starting to change and evolve with depending on what sector you're working in. I know like banking, they're trying to get people to go back into the office. Now, where I still think it's very attractive is the apartment buildings, multifamily apartment buildings. I just spoke to one of our former colleagues who does low to moderate income startup housing developments all over the country. So he manages this team, and he's saying that that's a really hot thing right now. So things that I'm not always thinking of just because they're not maybe my bread and butter, the bank does have an appetite for, and they're doing it in other markets besides Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, housing is something you hear and read about being in shortage. So the fact that there's an area of the bank that is focusing on lending into that area across the country, means that there is economic um, activity happening in that world. And again, look at some of the buildings downtown Cleveland. If it's not the brand new skyscrapers, they're taking some of those old buildings and repurposing them. And I was reading an article in the paper that Cleveland's actually one of the fastest to adopt or change their old buildings into apartments, right? And there's still high or low vacancy rates, so high occupancy within those apartments. So I mean, people need a place to live. I mean, it's just a fact of the matter.
Well, and to that point, I don't think it has anything to do with what we do, but the demographic that we're covering, these folks that are, probably older baby boomers, they don't always want to own their properties anymore, right? Because there's a lot of maintenance and, money to be spent on taking care of your property, where you can buy one of these converted office buildings, and that's a condo now. It's all brand new. You just pay rent and you're good to go. So I think that's what's making a lot of that so attractive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're dabbling a little bit into economics, at least locally. I see that if I did my homework right, you have an economics degree from Baldwin Wallace University. So makes you qualify a little bit, right, to talk about it. I want to jump back.
Degree.
Yeah, hey, you're using it, baby. You said something that M&A will continue to be a hot topic in 2025. What I'm seeing, and maybe you can comment back on, is that there's a lot of buyers building up, a lot of pent up demand for acquisitions. I'm seeing that across all industry as well. The real estate folks who work on it, right? I've got some contractors that are having great years that I'm talking to. I have a lot of buyers seeking. They kind of define it that anyone that touches the house, right? So HVAC and companies that plumbers, right? These are kind of become commodities that if you're in those service world, now you got to be a certain size, right? It's really the bodies I feel like the biggest companies want, but in general, M&A is cool. I would say there's a lot of buyers out there that have been working in industry for a long time that are ready to jump in. And what are you seeing individuals doing to prepare themselves? And maybe just talk a minute about what a good buyer looks like. So if you're working with individuals who've never bought a company before, what are their chances of getting a deal done through a bank?
I think the biggest thing is the buyer needs to be prepared with their finances first. So a lot of people come to the bank and say, "Hey, I want to buy this business and it's X amount of dollars." And the next question I ask is, "Well, how much do you have to put into the business?" "I don't have any money." Well, that's probably not going to be good. Making sure your personal house is in order. So credit, having a good credit score is pretty important. I'm not saying you have to be 850, but if you have a lot of derogatories or a lot of liens or a lot of slow pays, it's not going to look favorably upon your character. So, we always talk about the C's of credit, and we don't have to go through all of them, but credit and character kind of go together, right? And then cash, right? So how do you prepare? If you know you want to make an acquisition and you know that you need whatever dollar amount it is, it doesn't matter what number. Do you have the cash in liquid savings? Can you pull all of the equity out of your home so that you're prepared to use that as your equity infusion into that acquisition? Did you work for a major corporation like a Huntington Bank or wherever and have a 401k that you could tap? They have different programs that you can use your corporate savings money towards a personal venture like that. I've seen folks do that. So I'd say be prepared with that, and then be prepared with what we said a little bit earlier with the advisors. So as a buyer, you're going to need to have an attorney help you with purchase agreements or an LOI to start out with, and then help structure how you want it to look legally. And a lot of times, if you've never, you might only do this once in your life, right? You need somebody to help you with that, because the attorney that represents the business that you're buying is going to want to help this seller of that business. So they're not going to be as inclined to help you. So you need to find your own folks. Same thing with an outside accountant. So yes, the business that you're buying has an accountant, I'm sure, who's doing either their tax returns, reviews, whatever. But should you just take that person over? Well, maybe not. Maybe have that reviewed by your own folks to make sure that the numbers that you're getting make sense. So I don't know if that answers the full question, but I think those are the things that I look for that make a good potential borrower. I guess one other thing that I would add is, what experience does this potential buyer have for the business that they want to buy? So I hate to say it, if you were like a tennis pro and you came to me and said, I want to buy a manufacturing shop, I'd be like, that's kind of a stretch, man. What does
Unless they're making tennis rackets.
Well, I'm saying if they're just teaching tennis. Okay, fair enough. But whereas, so, myself, I've been in banking 22 years. Maybe if I wanted to buy a machine shop, I could write down in my resume, like, hey, I worked with machine shops. I have a strong knowledge of reading financials and how to figure out whether or not it works. So that way, when a banker has to present that borrower to an underwriter or to a credit officer, they could say, this is why it kind of makes sense, or this is why it does make sense that this person could be a potential owner and operator.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is the bank does have some pragmatic viewpoints, that just practical stuff, right? You got to have cash. You got to be able to have the ability to buy the business. If you don't, go find someone who has cash. There's probably more people out there who have cash than that, and then there are people who want to buy a business. So you can kind of pair those two together. Sitting with the credit officer and be able to, you have to be able to defend your client, right, to the bank. So in a sense, you are an intermediary between the bank and your client, and give you the ammo to succeed, right, and be practical with it, is what I heard you say. So don't be expecting to acquire a company you have no business running. If you don't, plug the gap, right? Be practical with it. Find a friend who's an engineer. If you're the money guy, your specialty is the wherever you came out of a controller role. You're the finance guy. You know how to work the blood flow of the business, which is the cash in and out. And then don't go trying to buy a manufacturer or vice versa. I like that. Well, I want to be conscious of your time. 2 more minutes, and I'll let you go. Anything you would like to say, I guess, in general about Cleveland, its M&A outlook, buyers, sellers, whatever's on your mind. Last thoughts.
So much like anything else in my world, and I'm sure in your world as well, is out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So if you're not talking about it, you're going to get, at least in my world, I'm going to get tied up in maintenance issues, renewals, whatever it is. So one thing that I'd say to anybody who's in this M&A kind of space, either from a buyer-seller perspective or a professional who wants to help these folks, is be present in those groups, in those situations, in those meetings. Sign up for an event through like we went to an event called ETA. Go to your local chamber and talk to the folks who are business owners currently in your community. That's where you're going to find the next deals. That's where you're going to find people who are the movers and shakers and buying the businesses. And I think in Cleveland, we have tons of that in all of the different sort of industries, accountants, lawyers, bankers, M&A guys like yourself, Sean, real estate guys who can help. They might be designated real estate, but they can help with the business acquisition too if there's a business tied to it. So I think Cleveland's outlook for this is very positive. I think there's a lot out there that is going to continue to come out from like, that we haven't even seen people coming yet because maybe they were like, man, 2024 is really good. Let me finish my books and then I'm going to have a really hot company to sell. And I think that's what I'm hearing from folks who kind of study this nationally is that we're not an anomaly here in Cleveland. If anything, we might just be on the forefront of it with a lot of this lower middle market M&A stuff.
Yeah, we're all preparing for the future, which is good. It means that there are many business owners out there that catch wind of this, that there are buyers out there, qualified, ready, willing, and able to acquire your business. And it's not all of this kind of highfalutin way of doing business. There's just real people who are active in their community that want to kind of take their business to the next level or even just maintain it, right? I think one of the biggest things I hear is, hey, Sean, I don't want to jump in and change anything. I want to maintain the people. I want to maintain what they're doing. This business has been around for X amount of years. I want to keep it going. I feel like you're probably running in those similar circles, but I do want to end on the one thing and just reiterate what you said. Go out there and get active in the community. That's how you're going to meet people. That's how you're going to find the next deal. Just how you're going to rub elbows with the right people. You are who you surround yourself with 100%. And that's how I find business. That's how, really good business gets done is through referral network, and word of mouth is still your strongest way of doing it. And at the end of the day, business owners are going to, look up, how do I sell my business? They usually call someone that they know when they're ready. So I like everything you said today, Irv. Appreciate your time and your energy. And Ava, thank you so much for facilitating and getting this thing recorded, and looking forward to pushing it out to the market. So thanks so much, Irv, and have a great day.
You
Of
too,
course,
guys.
thank you.
See ya.